Welcome to the Traveling Professors. I'm Professor Bob.
And I'm Professor Sheri.
And together we are
the Traveling Professors.
Welcome to show number 85 of the Traveling Professors. I know it's been a long time since I've done one of these. So what exactly happened to us? Now from the slide you can see that we decided to go on a Caribbean cruise. That's because we didn't get the chance to go to England. It was a little bit messy this year. And then we thought about going to Spain. Well, our old friend, our Labrador Pyrenees mix, Alex, is not in very good shape. And Sheri and I didn't want to leave him here for a long period of time. So we thought 9 days, 10 days would be okay. And so that worked out all right, except the cruise was just an absolute, almost total disaster. It will not appear that way in my descriptions here, but we ended up going to Fort Lauderdale and taking the Holland America cruise ship, the Eurodom, and we went to Half Moon Cay, to Aruba, Curacao, Cartagena, Panama Canal, Costa Rica, and then back home. And most of the time when we were in a location, it was fine, but there was way too much time at sea. And then of course we had a little hurricane issue since it went right into the port just as we were supposed to come in. So we had to spend an extra day at sea and then had to spend 2 extra days in Fort Lauderdale once we got off the boat because the hurricane went over Charlotte, which is where our connecting flight was located. And then there's a variety of things that happened to me. I'll talk about that at the end and talk about a little bit more in the description. This was originally intended to be, we took video, because I've gotten a lot of comments that people say, when is Sheri going to show back up again? Well, we got Sheri involved. So every other day we would do a video explaining what we were going to do. And it was just meant to be kind of a general thing. I just put them together quickly and put them up. Well, I've decided that the best thing to do is I'll use those as introductory and then show some pictures of what we did and then go to the next one and the next one and do that. So this is kind of a short version of our cruise of the Caribbean, which was almost like going to the Bermuda Triangle on a bad day or being hacked by pirates. So Sheri and I hope you enjoy this. Well, here is the picture of Sheri and I as we're getting ready to get on the Eurodom. This is the only picture that they took while we were on the trip. And we had a little trouble getting here. They gave us 4 emails about where we were going to be located and when we were to get on. And the final email, hours before we were to get on, told us to go to pier number so-and-so. So that's where we headed. No, that wasn't our ship. The ship was at another pier. So we had to go to that pier. And instead of waiting till like 2 in the afternoon, they said, just go ahead and get on the ship. So as we got on the ship, we finally get down to our room, and the room was nice. There's a note all ready for us. We assume it's something nice. Well, it's not. They canceled two items we were looking forward to. One of them is they canceled this first snorkel trip, which was going to Half Moon Cay the next day. And the other one, they canceled this exotic seafood dinner that we'd paid for off of Panama. They just, no, we'll just refund it. Not going to happen. So we're not in exactly a very good humor at this particular point, but the location is nice. Welcome to Fort Lauderdale, Florida. I'm Professor Bob with Professor Sheri, and this is the Traveling Professors. And you're going, where the heck have we been for a couple of weeks? Well, we just started our vacation through the Caribbean. We're sorry, but we have to make some new material. So each day, Sheri and I will take turns talking about a space that we are visiting and something that has happened. And then I will put these all together for a really quick little show of what we did briefly on our vacation. Then later on we'll have longer versions. So thank you very much. Now our ship was supposed to leave port about 3 in the afternoon or 4 in the afternoon. We didn't leave until 6:30. They told us that they had to have other ships leave, and that was just the way it worked out. In reality, they were waiting for a group of 100 people who were flying in on a chartered flight to make the ship. And this is kind of what happened. They never really told us a lot of what was really going on. So anyway, we go up to the observation deck to watch us leave port. And here are some really nice pictures looking down the canals and various ships in the area. And here's the observation area. And there's Sheri. This is where we sat to watch us go through the Panama Canal, which was really cool. And then here's one of the cruise ships that had already left. I believe that was the Allure of the Seas. Something really, really spectacular. It was huge. And then here we are. We're finally leaving. We're getting to the area where we exit out into the Atlantic. And then here's a view back looking at Fort Lauderdale. So far, so good. We're looking forward to going to the Half Moon Cay, although Sheri is not going to get the snorkel, and that was really what she wanted to do. Well, as you can see here, Sheri was not very happy when we got to Half Moon Cay. She bought about $200 worth of scuba equipment and was ready to go scuba diving, but they said that they just needed them for tenders. Unfortunately, later on we found out that they hadn't been scuba diving here for a while.
Hi, Professor Sheri here, and we're at Half Moon Cay. It's a little island which Holland America and another cruise line actually own. 45 people live on the island to maintain the island, and the only other way you get here is to get off one of the cruise ships that they allow. I was supposed to be snorkeling today. I don't look like I'm snorkeling, but at least I got to get in the most delicious, cool, amazing, clean water. And Bob is not at his best today. He's kind of hanging out in lounge chairs. There is a stingray tour here that wasn't available, but I would have loved to have gone on that. You get to hand feed stingrays. But anyway, this is just a tour of our wonderful adventure, and we hope you enjoyed the trip with us.
On our tour of the island, we stopped at one location where the beach was just pristine, and you can see the ships in the background. But ultimately, this is what the beaches ended up looking like. They were pretty crowded with the two ships. But we didn't get to go and experience the stingrays, but we did get to watch to see what the people were doing.
Day 3 of the excellent adventure to the Caribbean with Bob and Sheri. Today we're at sea. We've been sailing down through pirate heaven. We went from the Bahamas to the Circus and Turks, and now we're in the slot between the Dominican Republic and Cuba on the other side. I should say the island of Hispaniola in Cuba. And Jamaica is just out there. Now, Sheri and I both love the Pirates of the Caribbean, so I'm just hoping that this doesn't carry over too much for her. But we'll hope that everything stays the same. And we'll see you in Aruba.
Ahoy, mateys! Welcome to the high seas. Pirate Queen Sheri here with you today. You know, I know that Professor Bob is worried about me going Navy, but I don't think there's a chance of it. Although I did see a big ship out there, and I think that's the west end of Haiti. Yeah. Captain Jack said we were safe in these waters, though, that he wouldn't come after our ship because, well, we're pirate brothers and sisters. Now, tomorrow, excuse the name, tomorrow we are supposed to be in Aruba. And you know, I'm supposed to be playing the water and snorkel in Aruba, but I didn't get to yesterday. So, there's a big danger of there being a walk the plank entertainment opportunity tomorrow. Captain Jack said that he would come and help me run out the plank, bring some of his men from the Black Pearl, and we could all cheer as the bloke from marketing division went off the back of the boat. So, have a great day. I hope you enjoy all the pirates in your life, and I'll see you later. Good morning, everybody. Professor Sheri here, and we're in Williamstadt, Curacao. Okay, those names are not ones I say all the time. But as you can see, Captain Jack is not with me. Yesterday, I was able to snorkel. Yay! The water was great. Got kind of choppy on the second one. I've snorkeled in the Caribbean before, and I was a bit
disappointed in what was left of the teeny bit of coral and the fish. So many tourist ships, big ships, 3,000 people on a whack. But went out on a big sailboat, sailed around for a while, snorkeled in 2 different sites. The little yellow tangs, the blue tangs came up, right in my face,
Well, as you heard, Sheri did get to do her scuba thing. Now, we had at Aruba split into 2 parts. She did her scuba and catamaran thing, and then I did land and sea. I'm on the sea part. So here we are going out to where we're going to get into our little submersible, and we see all these catamarans out there, and one of those happened to be Sheri's ship. I just didn't know it at the time. So we got out of our launch, went into our submersible, and then we looked at the wreckage that was down below, which is an old World War II ship that was sunk there, was scuttled by the captain. And there were fish and other things. So this is a little view. The only problem we had with this submersible was you sat on one side or the other, and you didn't necessarily get to see what was on the other side. And the driver happened to be a little right-hand prejudiced, but we did eventually get to see most of the ship. And once we got out of there, we're heading back to shore, and we saw one of the launches from Captain Jack's crew heading out since they didn't need to throw the guy off the plank. We got on a bus and then took a land tour. Now, most of Aruba on the beach side is nothing but hotel, resort. But if you go to the other side of the island, it's much nicer. You get to see some other things. So here is the main light tower, which from this area you get a very nice vantage point of the island, as well as the only 18-hole golf course. And then we headed all the way to the opposite end of the island to see what was known as the Natural Bridge. Now, this first picture here shows this erosion that the sea does to the land and makes these natural bridges. Well, this one has collapsed, but as the guy said, once one collapses, there is another. So just a little bit away from it was this, and so you can see the people standing on top of it as the waves come in and out. But that's what they call the natural bridge. And on the way back, you could see this old extinct volcano in the background, which of course is pretty much responsible for this whole island. And then our last stop was this outcropping of rocks that you could climb on and get a nice view. And at that point, you can tell that the sun is going down, so we head back to the ship, and that's where I find out that Sheri has had her scuba trip. So now it's on to Curacao.
We hope you're going to have a great day in the sunshine too. See you later. Bye-bye. Oh, by the way, this is a 2-day thing because yesterday, by the time Bob got back from his tours and I got off of the boat from the snorkeling, it was getting dark. So you get 2 for 1. Bye now.
In the morning, when we awakened, Sheri and I found ourselves in Williamstown, which is the capital of Curacao. And you had this beautiful view of the area. You could see the other cruise ships parked out on the front, and then we are inside the isthmus where there's a bay and what have you, and there's a bridge which opens up. And part of that is because this is a Holland America ship, and this is part of the Netherlands, so they get a better place to park. And then looking towards the city on the other side. And then here's another shot of the city of Williamstown. And then looking to the back, this is the bridge that goes over the entrance. And we'll be going one direction to go on a sea voyage, and then we'll be going on another direction to be going on the land voyage. So this is a very nice location here. There's plenty to do if you walk even away from the ship, and later on we'll actually walk over to the town on the other side of the bridge in the evening. But for now, we're looking at doing our sea voyage. So we get on a bus, and they take us to one location, and then they realize that the tour doesn't come from here. So we go to another location, which actually is a little bay around the resort run by the Marriott Hotel. So we're walking down towards our ship, and it's another one of those submersibles, just like we were on the last time, or I was on the last time. What is different about this one is the windows were clean. It's the best view I'd ever had, and Sheri said it was the best view that she had ever had. And so we get in, and we have a seat that sits across, so you sit in and you can view to the left and view to the right. You don't have to worry about them turning the ship. We ultimately then head out, and so here's a nice view, and you see how the water turns really dark blue at the edge. Well, that's where the drop-off goes. That's something like 800 feet down from where the island is situated. And then we start going through the various areas to see the different types of coral and fish. And so this is a little video of some of that action.
It's going under a boat.
Well, after our sea excursion, we got back onto land, and I wanted to show you a couple of things. See this beautiful tree? It's also inside one of the fortifications that the Spanish built to help control this island. And if you get closer to some of these trees, you'll notice this little sign. Warning, the fruit of this tree is poisonous. Do not eat it. It smells really good. It smells like apple. And the early people to come to the island ate it and found out that it was deadly. So the Spanish planted all of these along the shoreline. Not only is the fruit poisonous, but just touching it can, to hurt your skin. We had an incident with Sheri. We're on the little traveling tram at Half Moon Key, and they got too close to the brush, and she got slapped upside the face. And evidently, one of those leaves hit her beside the cheek, and that thing itched, turned red, and flecked off skin for about 2 weeks before it finally healed. So this stuff is pretty nasty. Then here we are going back over the bridge. You can see the ship there, the Uradom, parked by Williamstadt, the town. And we're going to the Curacao distillery. So we're going to get to go in, and there's the outside of the distillery, and then they have the whole process of turning various products, natural products on the island into this famous liqueur. If you go to a liquor store, it's easy to find. It's usually blue, but you can actually get it in all sorts of different colors. Then after that, we went back to drive through the city to see the various buildings and landmarks in there. And then later on that evening, Sheri and I decided that we would just go on and walk over to the other town, see if we could find some souvenirs. And by the way, this was the only town that had classic souvenirs, where you had a shop and all sorts of different things. And most of the other places that we were at, it was just kind of like a booth or a table or something like that. So here we are getting ready to cross the floating bridge. And so we go to the other side and wander through the various buildings. You can see the beautiful paint jobs that they did on those. And then, of course, I came across a cannon. So Sheri had to take a picture of me with the cannon, with the ship in the background. And then after this, we went back to the Uradom and went to dinner, went to bed. And the next day, we are heading to Cartagena.
Our next stop. Now, this is day 6, and we're at sea. So we're just going to do some visiting of some of the shows and what have you. But from here on out, it gets really interesting. We're going to Cartagena tomorrow, and I'm finally going to get to walk up the giant fortress. So we'll see you at Cartagena. Good morning. Welcome to day 7, I believe, or day 6. We are in Cartagena, and hopefully we're going to go to the old port and to the main fortress. But as you can see behind me, this is modern Cartagena, which is quite different from when the Spanish used to come in here and loot, pillage, and burn. Now the oil companies probably do that. So hopefully it'll stop drizzling and the sun will come out.
Now, I taught Latin American history for something like 22 years, and I taught at Park Hill High School. And so I've always wanted to go down to Colombia to see this magnificent fortress. Now, Cartagena was, of course, one of the shipping points for the gold from Central and South America. So it's raided all the time, burned down all the time. And finally, the Spanish got fed up with it and put a gigantic fortress here, as well as fortifications around the city. Although initially, the fortifications around the city did not protect them from the jungle, so the pirates will land down the coast and then come in from behind. They spent a lot of money putting stone fortifications in, which were then added onto over and over and over again. And if you've ever seen Romancing the Stone, they filmed some of it here. So it is monstrous. So here we are driving towards it from the ship. We spent about 3 hours here. Here's the beautiful view of the ramp leading up. So you can see all the different stages around it. It has 12 major batteries. They're referred to as the 12 apostles. Each one of them can be separated from the rest of the fortress. So it is quite stunning, and it is it's not that difficult of a walk, but we didn't have any problems. The issue was that our guide had the whole of Colombian history, the history that he wanted to give us in this one fort. So we'd move, and he'd talk for about 15-20 minutes, and then we move a little further and do it again. And then when we got to the middle, he talked a half an hour. And Sheri and I are patient, but that's enough. So we ended up going on kind of on our own at that particular point. And this is the area where we were going on our own. There's more fortifications up to the top, and these entrances right here are into the bunkers that you could go in. And you really don't want to just wander around because you can get lost in those pretty easily. And then here's a nice view coming up as we're moving towards the top of the fortress. And then here we are on the very, very top. Our guide was down here in the little building talking, and we went up here because they had cannons in place. You get a nice little view of part of the new city up here. They have really nice bathrooms. They turned one of the bunker areas into a bathroom, which was quite nice. But this is what it looks like if you're going through the various tunnels. And then here's a nice shot of one of the cannons in its business end. And then once you get to the very top of the fortress, it's well worth the view. So here it is. This is the new city. And you can see that the sun has finally come out. We were up here for quite some time, and I'm going to do a whole show just on this fortification. But this is just a short version, and it's all I can do to shut up at this particular point. Now, after we left the main fortification, then we drove to the old town. And so you can see, here's a shot showing some of the other fortifications that were not quite as extensive. We then went into the old city. We went down one street which have these old houses. And again, he spent about a half an hour talking to us on a street that had traffic about the doorways and all of the different things, which were quite fascinating, but it could have been done a little bit easier and a little bit faster. We did not go into the cathedral. We went to a emerald place so they could try and sell you some jewelry, which they really didn't try very hard, and then they let us loose for about 20 minutes. So in the 20 minutes, I found the spot where the fortifications of the old city pointed out towards the harbor, and they had a variety of different pieces of artillery. Here's a nice closer view of one of those. They had mortars, they had other things, and then looking out from where the cannons pointed, you could see part of the harbor. And we were hoping that this is the ship that we were going to get to take back, because we're on the land cruise part of the trip to Cartagena. We have a sea part, so we assumed that we would be going back to our main ship, hopefully on that. That didn't happen. We had a regular skiff. So here is the view out of our ship as we're heading. But if you notice in the distance, buildings kind of disappear. We are going to get drowned. It poured down, and even though we had some covering, we still got soaked. And one of the things that happened is my right arm, I had a plastic wrap around the camera, and it was exposed to the rain. And it was like I ended up with a chemical burn there. It took 2 weeks for that to heal. It itched all the time, and finally I got some hydrocortisone and put it on it. But it felt like at one point, not the whole time, but at one point, I was being pelted with little hailstones, and it was just peppering my hand. At any rate, we managed to make it back. Here's the soaking Sheri, and here's the soaking Bob. You can see I'm not exactly well protected for a heavy rain, but at any rate, it was a great trip. Was well worth it to see it, and it was sunny enough. Here's a nice short view of the whole modern harbor of Cartagena. Please enjoy as we're heading off to Panama next. Well, finally, we get to Panama, and it's time to go through the Panama Canal. This is actually the highlight of the trip. I mean, I really enjoyed Cartagena. We both enjoyed it, but we've really been looking forward to the Panama Canal. Now, they told us that they'd start transitioning at 5 a.m. So I got up at 4:30 and got up to the observation area. They were going to open part of the ship so that you could access it from the deck, but I wanted to be higher up and get good pictures. There weren't a lot of people there to begin with. A lot of people had seen it before, so it wasn't any big deal. Here we are, one of the earliest pictures that I got from the ship that we're heading in. You can see the Bridge of the Americas. I'm using both my regular camera and my cell phone. Then as the sun comes up, you can see the split. To the right is the old canal, and that's where we're going to be going. And if you're going to take a cruise through the canal, you want to make sure your itinerary tells you which one of those you're going, because I didn't want to go through the new one, which is on the left. It's a much more widened one. I wanted to go through the old one. So as we get closer and closer, we start seeing the main lock. You can see up in front of us we have a ship, and we also have 2 tugs, so that'll be fun. We're going to have people coming in, and you see there's an orange ship and coming the opposite direction. So we have 1, 2, 3, I think there's 4 locks ultimately to get out into Lake Gatun. And we'd watched a documentary on the building of the canal, which was pretty good. It's National Geographic. And then I have a couple of them that I used in my classes. It took 3.5 hours for us to get through here. So here we are. We've seen they've loaded them up to the next level. They've opened. They're going in. We're sitting in our waiting position. And then here's the other ship coming back the other direction. And you can see that they're starting to open our gate so that we can get ready to go up. Now here I am in my jungle shirt. So you can see that we were actually here. The ship is coming by, and you can see what they call mules, the electric trams that help keep the ship from bashing into the side of the canal. Then here we are at the next to the last lock, looking at the ship in front of us as it opens and goes out in the Lake Gatun. Now we're only going to go to Lake Gatun. We're not going all the way through. We're going to take an excursion and then meet the ship back at Cologne. There it goes, going out into the Lake Gatun. I would point out that I found in 1959 a toy company manufactured a play set of the Panama Canal. It had two lock sets that you put one side and on the other, and then you could build a little dam or whatever, and you could do the opening the locks type of thing. And then here it's nice and clean. They're just waiting for it to open so that they can put in the water for us, and then we can come on up. And then we had enough time to go to the back of the ship so we could take a picture of the other direction. The sun is up. You see the bridge in the background. You see there's another ship that had just come into the lock. There's actually a ship off to the right that is going back down the other direction. So this is another shot of the locks as we're heading out. And then here we are heading into Lake Gatun. So there's the ship that was in front of us. They have them all set and waiting to come in. And you can get priority by paying a little bit more. I don't know what happened, but once we got out into Lake Gatun and went off on our excursion, they told us that they hoped that the ship would be at Cologne at 5:30, but it depended on the traffic and whatever. So that was our trip through the Gatun locks and the Panama Canal.
Welcome to day 9 and Panama. I'm Professor Bob in I'm going to the jungle professor today. We have just arrived from through the canals. We're on the Gatun Lake, and this is the Circus River behind us, and we're getting ready to go up through the canopy of the jungle and see if we can find monkeys and all sorts of things. Hopefully, one of them will land on Sheri, and that'll make a really good picture. So anyway, hope you're having a good day, because we're having a good day in the jungle in Panama. See you tomorrow.
The video that you saw was taken at a hotel, a resort hotel, that is right where the national park begins. And so we stopped there and then made our trip into the area where the animals and the plants were and did a little tour of that, and then went up into the canopy to a viewing station way up on top where you could look down into the Panama Canal. After we got off the ship, we got on a bus, and so our bus is taking us to the resort. And so we're going by the new canal. So here you can see the new canal with the ship in it, and you can see how wide it is. And then when we get to the resort area, it's part of the old military base. As a matter of fact, some of the buildings there date back to the building of the Panama Canal with the United States, and they've rehabbed them. So you can see these buildings that were barracks during the military occupation as well as during the Panama Canal building period. Now, as I said, we went into a preserve first, and they had a butterfly area, they had a plant area, they also had a tree frog area, and then we went to see the sloth area. And so here we have, there's several sloths that were there. These are usually orphaned and brought here and then raised, and one of the most dangerous things for them is periodically they will get down on the ground, and that's when they're subject to being attacked. So once we left the animal and plant reserves. Once we left the animals, we then headed to the gondola, which is going to take us through the jungle up to the very top of the ridge. And when we were doing this, I'm sorry, no monkeys were seen. We could hear them. We heard howler monkeys, and they made a really different noise than you normally hear. And our guide said there's a storm front coming in, and at this time of the year in the rainy season, that when you get heavy rain, it'll sometimes wash the scent away from where everybody else is. So that's actually a call to the other members of the group to come back and stay together. We saw a toucan fly across in front of us, but otherwise it was not a very wild animal day. And then when we get up to the top, of course, it started raining and it poured down. And we ended up climbing up to the tower. So here's Sheri and I at the top of the tower. And you can see in the background Lake Gatun. For a while, you couldn't see anything. And so here are a couple of pictures showing Lake Gatun, and you can see a little bit of the canal, and then here's a little bit of the newer part of the canal. And then after that, we went back down and got on our bus and headed to Cologne. It's the port area, and we got there about 5, and some people had been there since 3:30. And not only was there no ship, but nobody knew when the ship was going to be coming in. We just sat there and sat there and sat, and then it was a duty-free place, so that you could wander around and look at what was there that was overpriced. Finally ended up getting on the ship. I think it was 6:30 or something like that. Wasn't very well organized, but that was not unusual. However, we're back on the ship and we're heading off to Costa Rica for our last little tour.
Hi everybody, Professor Sheri here. You didn't know I could look this hot and sweaty, did you? It was worse a while ago. We're in Costa Rica. It's day 10, and this is our last adventure off of the boat. And it's just been an amazing day. We were in the rainforest, and a wonderful waterfall at the base of the rainforest, all kinds of birds and everything you can imagine. Plus, there was an area there to help animals that had been, abandoned by their parents or whatever, that kind of a thing. Butterfly garden. Can't even think of it all. I'm really, really tired. But anyway, it's a wonderful place to visit. It's incredibly humid and hot. It's this way all the time. But we've had a really great day. And this little canal, we went on it for a while, and we saw sloths up in the trees. We saw crocodiles. Pardon me. We saw herons that are unlike the ones we have at home. So there's just lots to see here, especially if you love nature as much as I do. So we bid you adieu. Bob will be putting this all together soon, and you can watch us travel with the traveling professors.
When our cruise ship arrived at Limon, we got onto our bus, and headed to the natural park for our trip through the rainforest. Now, on the way up, the guide talked about chocolate. She had one of the pods that the chocolate beans come in, and she broke it open and showed it to us, and then broke the individual pieces up so that we'd have something that we could taste or see what it was like. And then we end up at the park, and we, just like at the last one, we had several things to look at before we went on our trip through the jungle. One of them was a reptile section where they had all kinds of various reptiles, but the one that you're seeing here is the deadly bushmaster, one of the most deadly snakes in Central America. Then we went to the butterfly garden, which had lots of different plants. So here's one of the plants, and here's some butterflies eating on a rotten banana. And then we headed off to our station to get on the cable car. The advertising basically said that we'd be going through the jungle, so I envisioned a straight line down and a path and what have you. And so when we get to the station, we're not going to be doing that. We're going to be going down the hill through the jungle canopy down towards the river that flows down at the bottom. So this is the view that we had from the station as we're getting ready to get on the tram cars. And as you can see, the tram car to say it's a car is quite a stretch. So we end up going down through the jungle. Really didn't see anything but leaves and trees and what have you. When we got to the bottom, we had to make a decision. You could stay at that level and go through a section of the rainforest, or you could trek down the hill a little further to where the river was and a waterfall. Well, I didn't feel like doing the waterfall thing, but Sheri thought she would. So Sheri went down, and it was a little rugged. She managed to get down, and so here she is standing in one of the trees, and then here is the view of the waterfall down below. Well, meanwhile, back up at the top, here's my view. So we're walking through the jungle area, heading into that covered region. And once you get in there, you can see just how dense it is. And there's all different types of trees, and they talked about different variations and all sorts of things. And then here it gets a little thicker. And ultimately, we get to an observation area where we overlook the stream that turned into the waterfall that Sheri saw down below. And then after that, we went back and met at the cable car area and then headed back up. So this is a view looking down from where we were, coming back up to the top of the station. And then we got back on our bus, and then we headed off for our river journey. So we're heading back into the city, and here's the port of Le Mans, and I thought, well, this is kind of odd to be going on a river cruise thing, this industrial area that we're going through, and it wasn't very far, and we took a little right-hand turn and left this particular area and ended up here. This river, and actually this goes all the way into Nicaragua, and we got onto a boat and we were just going to go up the river. Well, the object of this is to see wildlife. Well, everybody then became spotters. So we're looking in the brush and we're looking at the top of the trees. You know, I'm looking for sloths, but they're way up in the top. They've got alligators, they've got caiman, there's all kinds of birds. So the guide was looking for them, and we had a couple of ornithologists, some professional bird watchers, and they were helping us out. But you can see, once you get away from the area, how rugged it is and really eerie. As a matter of fact, this little section was used for filming the very first Jurassic Park. And here's along the side, we spotted this. This is a caiman, which is a smaller crocodile-like thing, but it's a caiman. And then we're going a little further, and here at this guy's property, where he has his boat ramp, there is an animal laying on it. Now that's a crocodile. There's a little closer view of it. And he's just laying there in the sun, minding his own business. We saw some other birds. We saw some sloths. We saw a sloth with a baby, but the picture's really hard to tell what it is. So then after we went upriver, we went back down, had some fruit and drink, and then headed back to the ship. And as you can see, it's gotten later. It didn't rain on us today. And here is the little port area where our ship was located. And so we got back on the ship, and there's a group of fishermen out in the harbor plying their trade. And then we're on our way home. Of course, we're going to have a surprise, which you'll find out in just a second.
Yes.
Well, welcome to the Traveling Professor. I know I told you, or Sheri told you the last time, that we were done. Well, we got a little surprise. Now the weather looks great here, a little windy, but yesterday we found out that the port that we're moving into, Fort Lauderdale, was dead center in the middle of the path of Hurricane Nina. And today they say it's moving a little further north. Of course, I found that out on my phone. Nobody has said anything about this for the ship. As far as we know, we're heading into the abyss. So we'll see what happens. Hopefully we don't have a couple of days in Fort Lauderdale Airport before we can get home. Have fun.
Well, the picture you see here indicates that we did not have much fun, because shortly after I made that video, I thought it'd be great to go on up and have a little different lunch. So I found a place where they serve bratwurst and some fancy hot dogs and a milkshake. And I had that and got sick. I had food poisoning. I was able to get up and do some things, but I spent most of the time in the bathroom. We were delayed a day getting into Fort Lauderdale, so we had to change all of our reservations. And of course, the hurricane then went up over Charlotte. So we had to stay because that was our connecting flight. On my phone, I made a hotel reservation for 2 days, so then changed the flight. Then when we got to Fort Lauderdale, we went to the hotel, and I got up twice on the one day to go and get something to eat and to go to the drugstore. And then I got stomach medication, not diarrhea medication. So the next morning I had to go to it again and get some Imodium, and that finally helped. But I hadn't been doing much but drinking sport drinks and eating a little bit of food. So the next day we flew back to Kansas City, and by the time we got to Kansas City, I was so dehydrated that everybody dropped me off at the hospital near our house, and then Sheri came back with the other car, and I had food poisoning. I had colitis, so I was sick. They didn't keep me overnight. They did give me intravenous fluids and then sent me home with instructions. And I was about 2.5 weeks getting over that before I had full strength. And of course, that's right at Thanksgiving. And then our further delay in doing this was, it's like my warranty wore out. And then to make a long story short, in December, I had to have a wisdom tooth removed. At aerobics, I pulled part of my rotator cuff, and I had a rotator cuff injury. And then later in the month, I had slipped out of bed because I had my stupid slippers on and fell to the floor and banged my shoulder one more time. So I've been a mess, and I'm almost back to normal. So now we'll start getting more of these shows every week. Sheri and I hope you enjoyed the tour. Please come by our YouTube channel at Bob Packett, and please subscribe and leave some comments. Thank you very much. I've been doing podcasting on history for over 15 years. I've got over 4,000 shows, and I've done CDs, which of course can be sent out as USBs. So if you would really like to get more on history for free, then come by my website, as you see here, historyaccordingtobob.com, and see what's there. So thank you very much again.